Good evening, viewers, and welcome again to Discovering Truth. And I am Pastor Forbes from the Gateway of Abiding Word Ministries here in the Gambia. Tonight, I want to start what I believe will just be a one-shot episode, or possibly two. It's entitled Truth and Transparency. Truth and Transparency. And before I even get into what I want to say, this day I remember many years ago was a very sad day in our country, April 10th and 11th, when students and people were gunned down. Some are victims today, some of course lost their lives, and both victims and the families of those who lost their lives are still alive on this side of the eternal divide, and our thoughts, our commiserations are with them, and we are trusting that they will come also into real justice for that situation, recompense, retribution, reparation, and peace, so that we can all move forward as a nation. So our thoughts and our prayers are with their families, and we trust that those who are alive, whatever they have suffered, that there is recovery mentally, there is recovery physically and emotionally, and we can all move forward and just extend our love to them all and their families. Tonight and possibly next week, I want to start what I have discovered, what I've called Truth and Transparency. One of the easiest ways to describe or maybe even define truth is just to go into the opposite. When something is not a truth, it is an untruth or it is a lie. A lie or an untruth, more often than not, is a calculated, premeditated decision to twist or bend something that is not true, either to absolve oneself of responsibility and culpability, or to implicate somebody into something, or to change a scenario. And that's why you find out when people feel they have been offended and they have been lied against, those who have the ability will take a litigating position and go to court, go to arbitration, or want to prove their name, to clear their name and their integrity. Because when a lie sticks on you, or when an accusation sticks on you, or when something that is not true is placed upon you, if you do not have the ability to make it seem that is not true, chances are it can follow you. When you fill forms for jobs, when you fill forms at embassies, for travel, it can just follow you. Historically, there could be clips on the internet about you that are written that are not true. And so you find there are all kinds of litigations going on and on. And the bottom of it all really is evil. Even if the perpetrator of an untruth or a lie doesn't know it is evil. And one of the easiest ways to handle that is just to unfold the truth. And that is why, I'm sure you've heard me say this before, in the hierarchical principles of authority, the authority of truth, otherwise known as the veracious authority or authority of veracity, is the second authority. You can't really ultimately lie against the truth. Somebody has said the truth is like the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And I think maybe that's where they got the principle from, because it says truth that's buried one day will rise again on the third day. You can't keep it down. And the thing about truth is that it's truth. You can't hide lying. You have to remember what you said, who you said, how you schemed, what you didn't scheme, and you keep trying to invent to make it look like the truth. So that is truth. Transparency, again, can easily be defined and described and made to be understood when we use the word opaque. If a transparency could be, in those days before we had PowerPoint projectors, if you remember, when people had workshops, they had this plastic-like things that you could write on with markers, and you put them upon some kind of a projector with a very big magnifying glass, and it projects it on the wall. That plastic was and is called a transparency. In other words, you can see through it. If you have a laminating machine and you want to buy laminating plastic and you put paper through, that plastic is transparent. You can see right through it. It doesn't hide, it doesn't modify, it doesn't embellish, it just tells it as it is. And truth and transparency are fundamental, pivotal pillars for any society to live in peace and harmony. In the absence of truth and transparency, or where truth and transparency are micromanaged, and people who have truth and transparency are economical with them, chances are speculation becomes rife. And as I said earlier on, more often than not, when there is something which is not true or something which is not transparent, truth and transparency just literally demystify everything about being opaque and not telling the truth. Jesus Christ, our Messiah, our Lord and our Savior, made this statement, and I'm just reading it as he made it, but it was part of a contextual discussion. But permit me to apply it this evening. He said, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth that you know shall make you free." Some translations of the Bible say set you free, but the deeper word is make you free. In other words, by implication, truth has the power when applied and used to liberate. Truth makes you free. Truth dispels darkness. Truth kills rumor. Truth embarrasses a lie. Truth celebrates peace and justice for everybody. Have you seen somebody who's finally been declared not culpable because of a lie? The relief that comes upon them because the truth finally came out. So people say that the truth will come out one day. The truth will come out one day. And the truth always comes out. So truth liberates. Transparency is the same thing. With transparency, there is no second guessing. You know, there are people who you meet, and sometimes you hear this statement, what you see is what you get. When you see that woman, what you see is what you get. There's no duplicity. The person doesn't double deal. Their word is their bond. Their yea is their yea. Their nay is their nay. As the Bible says, what they say is what they mean. What they mean is what they say. You are not going to second guess them and put a percentage on what they are saying, because you really can't trust them, because these are situationally ethical people, because they believe today's meat is somebody else's poison, and they don't play those games. They don't play those games. They understand that truth liberates, truth sets free, and transparency doesn't hide. So whenever somebody assumes an office of an MD, a head teacher, the head of an institution, the head of a country, or the head of a religious institution, anywhere, and they say, well, we are going to be transparent. The books are going to be open. My office doors are open. Anything you want, talk to this person. It's a commitment really for progress of that establishment. Because if not, you'll have to be micromanaging, putting out rejoinders and putting rejoinders because what you heard was not true. And sometimes it has been said, and I'm going to make the statement, it has been said that more often than not, where understanding is absent, maybe communication in truth has been unclear. And I know there are people whose job it is in defending things in diplomatic circles, in political offices, and say, well, that's not exactly what he meant when he said this. What he meant was that. What she said is that. And we understand that. And sometimes that's like a diplomatic license or the license that politicians tend to have. But you see, if it is not going to bring liberty to the people, it's bondage. But if it's liberty, then it is truth. Jesus Christ said, when you know the truth that you know makes you free. If you don't know that you are a free person and you believe you are still a slave, you are still under somebody's thumb and whim and captive, you are really not going to operate in liberty. But if you know that you are free and you are freeborn, then your life takes it. Jesus Christ says the same thing. He who the Son of God sets free is free indeed. I am not bound by culture. I'm not bound by my tradition. I'm not bound by my color. I'm not bound by the area and the circumstances of my birth, by the limitations of my family, by the economic indices of my country, by the per capita index and all that. I know that I am free because he has set me free. I want to give you 3 examples, or maybe 4. 2 I will read from. The third I can't immediately recollect. The 4th is a very practical example. So the first place I want us to go this evening is in the 4th gospel of the Bible, and that is the gospel according to the disciple John. As I always remind us, there are 4 gospels, if you don't know, written from 4 different angles, but they have all, they cover, it's like putting a camera in all the angles. So what this one doesn't see you, that one can see you, show you. What this one shows you close up, that one shows you long range, but it's within the same vicinity and the same event. So Matthew's gospel, Mark's gospel, Luke the doctor, the physician's gospel, and John, the beloved disciple, they all gave their own angle. And I want to read from John chapter 1, verse 19 to 23, 5 verses. And this is what it says. Now, this is the testimony of John, that is John the Baptist, Yahya, that was the forerunner of Jesus Christ. When the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" So these people must have had discussions at home. Who are you? I remember sometime last August, I had gone to officiate a memorial service in London, and I was flying back, and I was at the crossed, you know, all the security, and you were in the lounge, and I was just trying to pick up a few gifts, and I could see a group of people who obviously I knew were Gambian men, and they were chatting to each other, and I could immediately tell what they were saying, because that happens to me quite regularly when I travel. So I knew they were talking about me, and I could see they were trying to say, "Momla, that's him, not him, it's him." And so I just kept on doing my shopping, and then one of them actually left. I'm sure he must have told them, "I am going to check." So he left, and he came, and I was on one aisle, and he was on the other aisle, and then we met. And then he looked at me, and I smiled at him. I said, "Hello." Then he said, "Pastor Forbes." I said, "Yes." He said, "You can't believe it. I just left Leeds this morning so I could drive to Gatwick, and I was watching you on YouTube all the way, not knowing that I will meet you." And so I understand that's the kind of scenario that was here. The Jews and the people were wondering about this John the Baptist, so they sent people to verify. Is it him? Is it not him? And so they asked him, "Who are you?" Now, prior to this, you need to understand, if you are not familiar with the Bible, that John the Baptist, being sent by God as a forerunner of Jesus Christ, was also baptizing people, and he was preaching, very hard messages at the religious leaders, at the bigots. He was calling them out for their hypocrisy, and he was really, really wild. And so they thought this could be he, because he was a prophet. So they began to wonder, is this the one really? Is this not the one? Is this the one? But it sounds like him, it looks like him, he's powerful, he may be the one. And sometimes when you hear that, You know, every human being fights with an ego. You know, people are talking about you and you know, you feel good. And sometimes you might even want to say yes and take a false name when that is not who you are. So verse 20 says, he confessed and he did not deny, but he confessed and he said, I am not the Christ. That is truth. The people may have thought he was the Christ. He may have been preaching like the Christ. They were expecting the Christ, the Messiah, Al-Masihu, and this man came and he was doing wonderful things. And crowds were coming to him, and the people said, this must be him. Let's ask. And he said, I am not him. And by saying that, truth liberates you from the burden of a false title, of a false nomenclature, of a false impression of who you really not, especially when you are later going to find out that the real person is going to appear. He said, I am not. And they didn't stop there. They continued and said, what then are you? Are you Elijah, that prophet that called down fire? And he said, I am not. They said, are you the prophet? He said, no. Then they said to him in verse 22, then who are you? After so many questions, he's just saying, okay, you know, as they say in English, take the name and play the game. Wamanla. You know, sometimes I crack this joke also when I go to places and people say, I recognize this voice. I recognize this voice. You're the one on TV. Most times I say, no, it's my twin brother. And people say, no, we know the voice, it's you. You know, sometimes you can get to that point where you want to just take it, but truth is truth. And we must always speak the truth and be transparent. And John said, I am not. Then they asked him, who are you, so that we may give an answer to those who sent us? Because the people are wondering, what do you say about yourself? And John said, I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, saying, make straight the way of God, as Isaiah the prophet had said. In other words, it cost us nothing to speak the truth. It is amazing that when people go to court, and I've said this over and over again, it's one of the most interesting things I've observed in life. People go to court and they swear that the evidence they're going to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help them God. And every witness who comes says that same thing, but the case goes on for 14 years. If everybody who came to say the truth pledged as they said that they were going to say the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, I think cases will finish like that. Because truth is one. But of course, as you can tell, sometimes people have to be reminded, you are under oath. We are reminding you, you are on, because we can tell that what you are saying is far from the truth. Here was John the Baptist. He just spoke the truth, and he said who he was. The other thing about it is what happens when there is misconception. And I want to go to the book of Acts of the Apostles. That is the book after John. So if you're following me and you want to read in the Bible, you have Matthew in the New Testament, Mark, Luke, John. It's the next book, ACTS, the Acts of the Apostles. And I'm reading from chapter 21. This is an interesting encounter. There's this gentleman called Saul, and he was really a fanatic trying to fight God, fight the Christians, kill the Jews, and then he got intercepted by Jesus Christ. His life was changed, he was transformed, he was born again, born anew, born afresh, and God gave him a mission. And then the people who liked him when he was doing bad now started trying to implicate him because he was doing good. And they were telling all kinds of stories about him. And this is one of them. In Acts chapter 21, from verse 37, it says, then as Paul was about to be led into the military barracks, he said to the commander, may I speak to you? And the commander replied, can you speak Greek? Are you not the Egyptian who some time ago stirred up a rebellion and led the 4,000 assassins out into the wilderness? And Paul said, not me. No, you got it all wrong. I am a Jew from Tarsus in Sicilia. I am a citizen of no mean city, and I implore you, permit me to speak with the people. So here, the commander of the barracks already had some information which he probably thought was so true about Paul, until Paul spoke to him in the Greek language, and he was shocked that, are you a Greek? Can you speak Greek? And Paul said, yes, I am. And he said, no, I thought you were an Egyptian who some time ago led a rebellion of 4,000 assassins. You can imagine when you are misrepresented, misconcepted, you probably can even die, lose your life. Somebody told a lie about you and you are going around and people are looking for you and it's the wrong person. Sometimes it is deliberate. There is a third example I can't find now in the book of Numbers, where some people had also told a story that some people were planning basically like a rebellion, like a coup d'etat. And the other side, who normally and ordinarily would have been their friends, were up in arms to fight them. And somebody just told them, look, why are you doing this? And they said, what do you mean? No, 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 we have no such plans. Truth and transparency. Ladies and gentlemen, as we call ourselves the New Gambia, and with every opportunity that looms upon this country, with the kinds of liberty, liberalized media, TV licenses, radio stations, online shows, all kinds of things going on, we must guard that with many things, but I want to put these two quite right there out at the front: truth and transparency, because those two make us free. Those two leave no room for doubt and speculation. Those two will take our nation far. I believe last week it was, I woke up one morning, I was preparing to do some spiritual work, and I noticed that there was a posting on Facebook about an interview with one of Gambian, very active and much followed Facebook owner, and a spokesperson for the Gambia National Army. And I listened to this interview. I'm not too sure, it must have been 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And when it finished, I was happy as a Gambian. I was satisfied. And actually, I made a comment on Facebook. And this is the comment I made. I said, good interview, brilliant spokesperson. This is the way we must go. Because this is what happened. The interviewer was asking the interviewee all kinds of questions. Some may have been questions from stories he heard, founded or unfounded. Some were even wrong names. But there was a composure, there was no fear, and whoever this spokesperson is, I salute him for that job. And I hope where he walks, they take notice of that. He was not afraid, because in days gone by, maybe he would have banged the phone because of who the person was. But he was able to answer every question professionally, brilliantly, and dispelled every rumor, at least that each one of us had heard, as was being transmitted by the interviewer. And at the end, both interviewee and interviewer spoke as two Gambians that loved their country. And I think the last question the interviewer asked was, what are your final words for the people? And the spokesperson said, look, this is our country, we are all together, let's work together. What you don't know, try and ask and we will clarify. And I really salute not just the interviewee in the Gambia National Army, but the interviewer. And to say that that is what truth and transparency can do. So no matter what the questions were, we had this, Mr. Spokesman, they said this, Mr. Spokesman, and some of it is the kind of information that maybe you can just get upset with. but the calmness, the composure, the professionalism, it tells us that it is possible. It is possible. And I believe every organ of government, as the ministries also, must have an agency where information is channeled, and the press will ask all kinds of questions, especially when it has to do with national life, people's security, perceived or real fears, and all that. But we need more of those kinds of people who will calmly, professionally just tell you this. So even when it came to certain things about medical records, about mental health, I heard the interviewee saying that we cannot divulge that. You know, I cannot tell you that. And they moved on to the next. And at the end, really, I think anybody who listened to that interview would have come out satisfied. Truth and transparency. Truth liberates. Transparency liberates. I believe we are getting to a point where we want to put into law a Freedom of Information Act or something like that, because it would dispel rumors, it will dispel suspicions, because suspicions and rumors have a way of festering and building anger. By the time you want to handle it, it's too late. And this is what happened here. John the Baptist said, no, I am not. They were interviewing him. Are you this? Are you that? The people are saying. Sometimes you can get angry and say, but why are you interviewing? Why are the people saying? But he calmly answered, if the people are saying you are Njai and you are Forbes, just let them know you are Forbes. Your records are there everywhere in the country for them to see you are Forbes. It's fine. And people get onto something else and mind their business. And after some long time, things come down. As I love to remind us Gambians, where is VPN today? VPN was, we had to use that to protect ourselves. Things were being blocked here, like everybody wanted to kill everybody. Now we are all free. So the perceived fear was only a figment of somebody's imagination, which would not have been there if freedom of information, regular information outlet, bulletins, gazettes, meeting the people, speaking to the people had happened. I believe I want to continue this by the grace of God next week. Truth and transparency will set us free. Until I come your way next week by the grace of God, this is Pastor Forbes saying, have a good evening. May God bless us all. May truth and transparency be major pillars in our national life as well as in our individual lives. Good night.